Okay, so in here we've got something that smells deliciously like toffee, and it's made from a traditional South African beer. Want to find out how I made it? And remember, there's a secret ingredient at the end. Hello and welcome back to another Beaver DIY day. So sorry for not uploading a video this week, but I had a really hectic week at work. So let's get into what we are doing this week. We are taking a traditional unhopped African beer called Umqumbothi, and we are turning it into a whiskey. So this is an experiment. I am struggling to get malted barley, number one, and because it's winter, my barley takes way too long to malt. So I thought there's a readily available malted product in South Africa, and it is the king corn, or the malted sorghum that they use for that traditional Umqumbothi. So I'll be using the king corn brand to make my whiskey. So the good thing, or the nice thing about this brand of product is that the sorghum is already pre-crushed, ready for you to use. And I will be using 3 kilograms of the sorghum. So like I said before, this is the king corn brand that I'll be using, and it's really available in almost all of your supermarkets in and around South Africa. The other thing that I will be using is the yellow corn. The yellow corn I bought from a local feed store, and the yellow corn was pre-crushed and sieved. So on the bag it said yellow corn pre-crushed and sieved. I will be using 5 kilograms of the yellow corn, and I'll be using 3 kilograms of the sorghum. Now I will not be following the Umqumbothi recipe to a T. I will be taking some liberties on how they make the traditional beer. So first off, they say maize meal or millipap. I will be using the yellow corn. That's number one. Number two, they leave it overnight after adding just boiling water to the mixture to sour. I will not be doing that. I will be taking a 90-minute mash turn like we did with our previous whiskey, so to get that amylase of the malted sorghum to chow away at the corn. Now because the malted sorghum here does not have a very high amylase count or a high DP or diastatic power, what I'll be doing is I will be running it at a slightly higher temperature. So that's according to all the literature I have read on all the brewing forums about malted sorghum. It likes to run at about 70 to 72 degrees instead of the 65 that your barley and that type of stuff likes to run at. So we will be running this at a slightly higher temperature to get those amylase nice and active. The other thing that I've done is the corn on the side over here. About 4 hours before I started everything, I just took the corn out of the packet, put it into the pot with nice and cold water, so straight from the tap, cold water, and I let the corn soak. I also stirred it up and removed any of the bits that floated to the top, to ensure that there's no ugly buggies or grass or anything, because it's meant for chicken feed. It's not clean like the millipap would have been. Okay, and then I brought it over here, and now I have been cooking it for about an hour and a half now, and all I'm trying to do is get it into a nice thick porridge like consistency to get all the starches out. Because that sorghum doesn't have a high amylase count or a high diastatic power, I want to give it an easy job to convert these starches. So I'm cooking it, I'm serializing the grain here, and getting all those starches out of the corn, so the malted sorghum can just go and get all those starches converted into sugars. Okay, so here is the mash turn. It's all sanitized and clean and preheated. So like I said, just added hot water to it and left it so that your insulation on the sides start getting up to temperature. We will now be sieving. We'll be using a sieve or a brew in a bag type of deal to do our mashing. Instead of using the sieve like we did last time to transfer it over, what we will be using is normal viol or a netting that they use for windows or whatever. So I did a bit of research and I found that they say the best thing to use is this viol. You buy it from any linen shops. They sell it per meter and it is a nylon mesh that they use. So what I've done, I just bought about 3 meters of the stuff, and I will be pushing it into my mash tun. Seeing what size I need to make it. That's why I bought so much. So I'll be pushing it in and allowing it to hang over the sides. So when I am done, I can just bring the sides up and then wring out the liquid out of your grains. So yeah, there we go. We're just going to get that into the bottom here, like that, and get that going. Cool. Next up, what we need to do is we are going to be adding our grains in, but before we do that, I'm just going to add 1 or 2 buckets of the strike water into this. So I will be adding about 10 liters, not about, but I'll be adding 10 liters of water into my mash tun over here, including the water that's already inside of the corn. That will bring us up to about 15 liters. And then I'll be adding my king corn. If you want a strike water calculator, Jesse from Spillet has a great strike water calculator on his website. I will link it down in the description. Okay, so with our strike water in here now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get that big ass pot full of corn to a closer proximity to this, so I can just transfer the corn into this mash tun here. So remember, this is a quick job. The longer you leave it open, as you can see, the more heat escapes. Okay, so as you can see, our corn has now gone all nice and squishy and soft, and all the starches, or not all, but most of the starches has now come out, and you can actually feel this liquid has now gone into a starchy, thick liquid. So your sorghum that doesn't have a high diastatic power will have an easier job to convert these sugars into starches, these starches into sugars. So yeah, let's get this transferred into our mash tun, and then check our temperature, see if we need to adjust it, and then add our next batch of malted barley. Remember to add little bits, stir it, add a little bit, stir it, add a little bit. Don't just add everything in at once, or else you're going to create dough balls. Okay, there we go. Our sorghum is all added in. Let's just mix it, give it a nice stir, get everything nice and mixed all the way through. Okay, so with our sorghum in, our corn in, and our mesh sitting at the bottom of it, we are now ready to cap this off and then leave it for 90 minutes. So set a timer for 90 minutes, and then we will come back and we will check if the amylase did its job. Okay, so it has now been 90 minutes. We've just done our update to Instagram. So if you want to see progress on projects and that type of stuff, I'll be posting updates on Instagram as I'm busy doing the projects and that type of stuff. So yeah, remember to check out my Instagram account. Also, just before we open this up, remember to hit that subscribe button down in the corner here if you find any value in these kind of videos. So yeah, let's get a looking and see if the sorghum actually had enough amylase to convert the corn starches into sugars. So let's get it open up. Okay, so yeah, as we can see, this is no longer a goopy mess. It is watery. All the corn is now individual husks. There's no longer that syrupy stickiness that sticks to your fingers. And yeah, smells quite nice actually. Smells like Montebello pop. I don't know if you've ever had that, but yeah, it smells like that. So looks like the amylase in the sorghum did its job. So yeah, we mashed it at 70 degrees centigrade, left it for 90 minutes, and it's a nice and watery mixture. So that means the starches has now converted into sugars, and we should now have enough fermentable sugars in here to get it to ferment. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to get all my corners together, and this is going to be the hard part, is I need to now tie this off so I can actually drain the liquid off of this. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to get everything nice and together so there's no holes. I'm going to take a piece of yarn and just tie it up. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to dunk this back in there, get it to soak a little bit more. I'm going to fill this bucket, not full, but I'm going to add some water into this bucket here. Then I'm going to take this grain here, dunk it into this water. This water will be at strike temperature once again, so it's going to be nice and hot straight out of the boiler. Put the grain bag into it, and I'm going to tea bag it up and down to get as much of those fermentable sugars out as possible. While that is filling, as always guys, everything is clean and sterilized. Use Star San or whatever sterilizer that you use. Make sure everything is nice and clean while doing this. Okay, so now we know this bag's going to work. All I'm going to do is I'm going to lift it out, leave it to drain for a little bit, dunk it into this side here, and then once we've done that, I'm going to drain off this liquid, add it to our boiler. Okay, so now that's submerged into there. Next up, I'm going to transfer the water from this side into my boiler over there, and then I'm going to get it up to a rolling boil for about 15 minutes just to kill off any of that bugs. I will give it a 15-minute protein rest as well, just to ensure that there isn't any boil over while doing the boil. Okay, so time to transfer from here into the boiler, and then what we're going to do is we're going to do that quick boil, get it up to a rolling boil for 15 minutes, and then switch off the power, get it into our fermenting bucket, cool it down, do all that other stuff. But yeah, let's first get into transferring it. Okay, so whatever was in the mash tun has now been transferred into the boiler. All I need to do now is just sparge these grains here. So I'll be transferring them into the mash tun, and then that liquid at the bottom there, I'll just pour it over the grains and then just dunk it a couple of times and get as much of those sugars out as we can. So all we do is we just dunk it up and down. And then let it dry. With as much of that sugars out of the grain as possible, time to transfer the last little bit over to our boiler and yeah, get it boiling. Okay, so let's just quickly recap what we've done. So we cooked our corn, got it to a nice soft porridgey consistency, allowing all those starches to be taken out of the corn. Next, what we did is we added it to our mash tun, which is just an old cooler box. We used some of our netting, and we then added our matabella and our water and everything into the mash tun, left it for 90 minutes. We cleaned or sparged the grains to get as much of the liquid out as possible, and now we are left with roughly 22 liters of wash in our boiler. We're going to boil it for 15 minutes. We will see how much we get out at the end of the day and how much we leave in the boiler. Same as last time, we had a little bit of sediment at the bottom there that I didn't want to transfer into my fermenter, so I'm thinking I'm going to be leaving 2 liters again. So yeah, next up what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn on the elements, get this to a boil, set a timer for 15 minutes. Once the boil starts, all this will do is it will allow any bugs or any wild yeast or anything that you don't want and you don't have control over to be boiled out. You do not need to do this step. It's not necessary to do this step if you're not scared of getting inconsistent flavors or something like that. So yeah, I'm just extra cautious, so I boil it, kill off any of the other stuff, and yeah, there's an argument to be made that it will make better whiskey if you don't boil it, but yeah, I'll boil it. Cool, so turn on the elements and I'll see you guys in 15 minutes. The boil is over. 15 minutes later, it took about 20 minutes for the boiler to heat up, 15 minutes for it to boil. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to filter it one more time through this cloth here. Then I'm going to add it to my fermentation bucket. I'm going to run into the house with the fermentation bucket, and then I am going to cool down this to pitching temperature as fast as possible. So I'll be submerging the bucket into cold water in the basin. I will also be adding sanitized ice bottles into the wort, and then I'll putting the cap on, allowing it to cool down as fast as possible. I don't have a wort chiller or anything like that currently, so yeah, I'll be using the submersion method to cool it down. So yeah, let's get into that. Okay, so with everything filtered and transferred into our fermentation bucket, it's now time to get this to cool down as quick as possible. So the reason why you want to cool it down as fast as possible is you don't want any nasty buggies to come into this. So what I'll be doing is, like I said, in the basin, cold ice blocks inside, bottles of ice water inside, and then allowing it to cool down as fast as possible. So yeah, let's get into it. We have now cooled it down to 25 degrees centigrade, currently 4 degrees outside here, so that's why you see the vapors coming off of it still. But yeah, so we got it down to 25 degrees. Now for the last little bit is I add some blackstrap molasses, 500 mils of blackstrap molasses. I'm going to be adding to this, and then I will be pitching my yeast. So my yeast combo is once again 1 packet of bread yeast and 1 packet of brewer's yeast. So I've been asked, why do I do the packet of brewer's? Packet of bread yeast is it's like a little nutrient bite for the yeast halfway through the fermentation. So by the time that the yeast is done, the bread yeast is done, with the 6% alcohol by volume, they start dying off. Then your brewer's yeast will be nice and active, and they start chewing up the bread yeast that has died, that's still in suspension within the solution. So your fermentation gets a little bit of a kick halfway through, and yeah, that just gives it a nice clear fermentation at the end. Okay, so let's just stir the molasses in, get that last little bit of extra oxygen all incorporated in. Now it smells like toffee. Okay, so it's all mixed up, ready to go. So time to pitch the yeast. As you can see, the yeast is nice and active. It's 500 ml of water with a 15 grams of sugar, and yeah, let's pitch it. Next up, all I'm going to do is I'm going to put my lid on, have my little water heater or my fish tank heater in here set to 22 degrees, and yeah, let it all ferment out. Thank you once again for joining me, and hope to see you in the next episode.